welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 126 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 52 of A Clash of Kings, that's Sansa 4.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide you some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. Particularly helpful if you're not reading along. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing all right. We've been talking for almost an hour before we decided to start recording. So
yes, the time had come to set aside these childish things.
I did something dumb right before we started, right before I came down here to start recording. I was walking the dog, and it's January, and even though we live in a warmer part of the U.S., it's still a little chilly around this neck of the woods this time of year. So I had on my knit cap because, as everyone knows, the top of my head is sorely lacking in insulation.
A shiny dome.
Yes.
Baylor's sept.
And so, Penny and I are walking, and she does her business, and I pick it up in my environmentally biodegradable bag, because I try to do my part for the environment. But so then we're just finishing our walk, and I felt like I needed to pull the cap down over my right ear a little further, and so I reached my hand up to do it, but I did it with the bag that had the dog crap in it, and I swung the bag and hit myself right in the face with a bag of Penny's dog crap.
I only find that slightly amusing because I've done it myself. So,
I looked around to make sure nobody had seen what I just did.
Yeah, I know this feeling all too well.
Oh. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Mackelly is a wuss, let me say, because today was absolutely roasting down here. I played soccer at lunchtime, and I drove home with my sunroof open. It was so warm. It was.
I think it got to the mid-50s, which...
It was... My car said 59, which is 15 Celsius, which is really quite warm.
Yes. I think maybe I was just accustomed to wearing... It had been really cold this week. Like, up until today, yes. It was very cold.
The delta today was huge. I mean, I think it was down, I think it was 20 Celsius from high to low today, which is a big difference.
Yeah, right.
Or 36 Fahrenheit high to low.
Yes. Nice day. Although we're supposed to get a big snowstorm tomorrow, so.
Yes, that's exciting. A big snowstorm. We were supposed to get one last week, which turned out to be rain.
Yes.
Which was not that exciting.
Molly's looking forward to it, of course. And if you might recall from last year, she will not be sliding down the neighbor's yard and making a mud.
Oh, because she tore it up, didn't she?
She went sliding down the neighbor's yard without asking them and made a big mess and got into big trouble. So she will not be doing that this year, regardless of the amount of snow.
Well, this is not the longest chapter, but we have an immense amount of notes.
We do.
I think it's the longest set of notes we've ever had. So we better get down to business. How did we leave Sansa Stark? Last time we saw Sansa, and it's been a while, 20 chapters to be precise.
Wow.
Since last we had a Sansa chapter. She was being humiliated and tormented in the throne room until Tyrion intervened. Do you even remember that?
That was the one when Joffrey wanted to have her stripped, right as Tyrion came in?
Exactly, and Tyrion saved her. And it ends with her taking a nap in Tyrion's room, if you remember.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
But since then, we knew through a Tyrion chapter that she was in a lot of peril during the riot that followed the departure of Myrcella to the ends of the earth. To multiple ends of the earth as well, not just one.
The four corners of the earth.
We also know, although Sansa definitely doesn't know, that plans are afoot to marry Joffrey to Marjorie Tyrell, who is not the same person as Sansa Stark.
Wow. I think you're right, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fact.
All right, why don't we give them the summary of this one?
All right, I wrote this summary about 11:30 last night while laying in bed. So let's see how this works out.
Ooh, I've only sketchily reviewed this, so I'm hoping it matches with what I remember from the book. But let's be honest.
So war has finally made it to King's Landing, and the most evident sign of the conflict within the city is the smoke and ash that are a constant presence since it began. Both King Stannis' men and Tyrion's wildlings have taken to burning the Kingswood to suit their own needs. Stannis himself is still on the march with most of his force. It's his vanguard of 5,000 that sits encamped across the Blackwater from King's Landing, led by Sir Morrigan.
Sansa and Ser Dontos meet in the Red Keep's godswood. Dontos tells Sansa he's much more in the know these days than he ever was as a knight. The High Lords talk as though he's not there because he's a fool. He also mentions that Lord Varys pays for any nugget of information with gold. He confirms to Sansa that Stannis did burn the Storm's End godswood as an offering to R'hllor, and adds that he's under the rule of the Red Priestess, body and mind. He says Stannis will burn the Great Sept of Baelor too when he takes the city. Sansa approves of the move.
Sansa doesn't get the status report she's hoping for regarding their escape plan. Despite her having nearly no guard or watch on her at all, it's just too dangerous to leave the city at the moment. But he assures his Jonquil that her Florian has made a plan with a friend, and when that friend returns to the city, they will leave on a ship to safety. He urges her not to be afraid.
If she weren't afraid, she'd be the only person in the city. All fear a repeat of the rape and pillage carried out by the Lannister men during the sack of King's Landing, and the doors were open to them. Now Tyrion plans to fight, so the fear of retribution on the populace is even greater. After the two part, Sansa passes her chamber and climbs to the top of the tower. From this elevation she can see all laid out before her. While surveying the scene, a stab of pain shoots through her belly, and she nearly loses her balance and falls.
She's steadied by a hand out of the darkness. It's the hand of Sandor Clegane. He points out that she didn't look him in the face, but yet she sure was glad to see that face when he rescued her during the riot. Sansa realizes he's right and meets his gaze. She discovers that his eyes make it so hard to look at him. Eyes full of anger. She thanks him for rescuing her. When he disparages her courtesies, she asks if he gets joy from scaring people. He responds, no, he gets joy from killing people.
The Hound adds that killing is the sweetest thing there is. Even the mighty Eddard Stark fell to the executioner's sword. He then puts his sword to Sansa's neck and says he's killed all manner of men, women and children. They're all just meat and he's the butcher. He fears no god or person. Sansa thinks that could be true, with one exception, his brother. He doesn't care for all the burning, though. Fire is a coward's weapon, he says.
That night, Sansa dreams of the riot. Only this time, despite her calls for help, no one comes. Her guts are sliced to ribbons and her teeth are knocked out. When she wakes, she's had her first period. The sight of the blood and what it means sends her into hysterics. She scrubs the blood from her thighs and tries to throw everything into the fireplace, from her clothes to the feather bed itself.
All she accomplishes is to fill the room with smoke and ruin her fine dresses. Later at breakfast, the Queen asks her if she knows what her flowering means. Sansa responds that it means that she can now be wed and bed to King Joffrey. Cersei can tell by the look on Sansa's face it's not a prospect she relishes. Cersei understands and admits that Joffrey is difficult, but Sansa can thank her sister Arya, if she weren't dead, for that. She shamed Joffrey, so he shamed Sansa. Cersei adds that Sansa might never love Joffrey, but she'll love his kids, and that love is poison, a sweet poison, but one that'll kill you nonetheless.
Ah, such touching words.
Yes, yes. Cersei greeting cards.
Yes. Cersei, the Cersei line of Hallmark greeting cards.
Yeah. So the backdrop to the entire chapter is the evolving siege of King's Landing. Both sides have been lighting a lot of fires. The Lannisters have burned everything outside the walls, and we know this from the last Tyrion chapter. That was to prevent there being easy ways to climb the walls. And Stannis' army is cutting down trees to sort of like create their own cook fires and things, and they stretch as far as the eye can see. So everything smells of smoke.
Yeah. So Tyrion mentioned in that last Tyrion chapter, he was going to torch all those structures, and his reasoning at the time was, is done for the safety of the people of King's Landing. This will help us defend these people. But of course, if you trace the steps back, it's because of the Lannisters' presence and desire to fight that the city's in danger. It's kind of similar to Theon protecting the people of Winterfell after him being the one that brought the danger to the people of Winterfell. You know,
although slightly different here, arguably, from the Lannisters' perspective, because they're not the invading force.
True.
You know, I mean,
yes.
But yeah, I mean, I do see the parallels.
If the Lannisters were to flee or lay down their weapons, I'm sure Stannis would bring his force in peace, not
yeah.
You know.
In fact, I've never really understood the idea. I mean, why on earth did the Lannisters murder the citizens of King's Landing at the end of Robert's Rebellion? It makes zero sense.
Right. It really doesn't. Unless they were told to create chaos for whatever reason. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, of course, I say he comes in peace, the Great Sept excluded from that, at least based on the rumors that Tyrion has started.
That's going to get it.
Yeah.
Because that's not the god of R'hllor. But, you know, a church is a church. You know, when Britain moved from Catholicism to Protestantism, they just repurposed the church.
Right, yeah.
So if you go to England and you see a very modern-looking church, it'll be Catholic.
Okay.
If you see an old church, it will be Protestant, because
right.
basically it used to be Catholic and they nicked it.
Right. Yes, I get that. Yeah. So they could just change the they could just change the sept to the
right.
The church.
It would be weird to have a seven-sided temple to R'hllor, but hey, you know.
Right. Although it certainly doesn't seem like Stannis is the kind of king that would tolerate any kind of rape and pillage of his own people anyway. I mean, he's the one that tried to outlaw brothels. That's how straight-laced and, you know, forward, straight down the middle of the road he is. He's not going to tolerate rape and pillage. But, of course, he might not have control over every member of his force. So,
yeah. So Dontos has been learning things. He's learned that Tyrion's mountain clans are having success in pestering Stannis' army. While I was reading that, I was thinking Dontos knew too much, and I was ready with my pedantry pen. But he does then explain that, you know, as a jester, as a fool, he's hearing all these things that he didn't used to be privy to. You know, as a knight, he was kept out of these conversations, but as a fool, he hears them.
Right.
It's quite sharp of him to recognise that fact, and I think you made the point that Arya experienced the same thing at Harrenhal.
Right.
The lowlier you are, the more you're ignored, and therefore the more you hear.
Yeah. When she was a mouse, because she always seems to give herself an identity, like a sheep or a mouse or a wolf. When she was a mouse in Harrenhal, she heard all kinds of things for the exact same reason that Dontos mentions here. So
Ser Dontos' character is beginning to take shape, and he's quite complex. I mean, he reveals to Sansa he's drunk during this whole scene.
Yes,
so everything
to the point of swaying.
Yes. He reveals to Sansa that spying can be lucrative, suggesting that he's, you know, earning money for this spying. Right. Why he's telling Sansa this, I don't know. Why he's telling Sansa the things he's learned, I barely know, because none of it's very useful to Sansa. The only thing Sansa wants to hear from him is, how are we getting out of here? He's really not coming up with that. He's just really being loose-lipped, and which goes to his drunkenness, which goes to his unreliability, which goes to why anyone, other than the completely desperate Sansa, would make a plan involving him. So then, who is this friend? This is sort of the bit that gets me a little bit sort of surprised, because he keeps talking about this friend who's going to arrange for a ship to get them out of King's Landing.
Right.
This friend is out of town. So for me, all fingers point to Littlefinger. I noted a couple of episodes ago that Peter Baelish and Dontos were seen together several times in the past, so it does make sense. It fits that he might be the friend he's talking about, and so that's good news, I think, for Sansa, because Littlefinger is a player who could arrange something complex like a ship to get her out of there. But it makes me wonder about Littlefinger's decision making, because Ser Dontos is a mess.
Right. Yes.
He's a person in a position to do things, but he's a person who's not reliable. And so I do worry about tying myself to him.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But, you know, it also, if if we consider the friend to be Littlefinger, which I guess there's a few options that it could be, but if we
there are a
consider it to
few
be-
options, yeah, but
if we consider it to be Littlefinger, then whose plan is this? Was it Dontos that came to Littlefinger and said, I want to get Sansa Stark out of here for saving my life? Or was it Littlefinger that is the driving force behind this plan, and he recruited Dontos and said, go approach Sansa Stark about this plan of getting her out of the city? You'd have to think, with Littlefinger, every move is so highly calculated that if he wanted her out of the city by a particular time, he would have found a way to get her out of the city. So,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean, clearly all of Peter Baelish's plans are not just Sansa.
right.
He has other
Yes.
irons in the fire,
Yes.
I mean, he's in many ways, actually, if you think about it, the sequence of events might be, so he is currently off. The last we know of him was courting Margaery Tyrell on behalf of Joffrey Lannister, Joffrey Baratheon.
Right.
Oops.
Cersei comes close enough in this episode to revealing that anyway.
Right. So maybe when he comes back with Margaery is the point where he would then spring Sansa, because at that point nobody's paying any more attention to Sansa because she's no longer needed, sort of thing. So
yeah, sure.
that
makes sense.
could be the timing.
But also, like you mentioned, it certainly sounds like Dontos is on Varys's payroll. So maybe Varys is involved in some way. Maybe something to do with Sansa plays into his and Illyrium Apotas's plan that Arya overheard. That's a possible option, or at least.
But we don't know that Varys is out of town, though, right? We do know that Peter Baelish is out of town.
We have not heard whether Varys is in or out of town at this moment. But at the very least, it does sound like it's possible that Varys might know about this plan. If Dontos is as loose-lipped as he seems to be in this chapter, he might have given away the fact that he's trying to help Sansa to get out of town.
Yeah, but I will say, coming back to my idea, because I'm pretty confident that it's Peter Baelish. If it's Peter Baelish, he's left them in an awful position, because both of them are at the tender mercies of Joffrey, with no one looking out for them, basically. And so, I mean, if you remember, the last Sansa chapter was when, to try and protect her, Dontos hit her over the head with a melon.
Right.
That was the good part of that chapter for Sansa.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's they are in a quite the predicament until they can get till this plan can move forward. You can't trust Joffrey to not have one, either, or both of them killed or maimed in some way.
Particularly Ser Dontos.
Right.
I mean, Sansa. There are strategic reasons to not kill Sansa.
Right.
He's being stopped from his worst inclinations there. But Ser Dontos is a drunken fool who's going to annoy you on a regular basis.
Yes.
The chances of him getting through the next few weeks are not that great.
Yes. Now, of course, she was worried at first, when she first got the letter, that it was a trick being played by Cersei or Joffrey, this whole escape plan. So you can't entirely rule out that this isn't some elaborate, just get her hopes up to dash it on the rocks situation.
Wow. That would be cruel even for George Martin.
Tell that to Ned.
Yeah, true. This could all be Dontos' own doing, though, because, I mean, obviously he says he's got a friend that he's working with, and that friend could be anyone. But Dontos has been in King's Landing since he was a boy, so he does know a lot of people, presumably. I mean, typically a drunken person has a lot of friends of a similar ilk, so...
Well, that's true.
He will have contact.
Yeah, you're right. He certainly would know a decent amount of people. So, yeah, I mean, we're assuming it's, your proposal is that it's Peter Baelish. That's because he's the character we currently know. They could introduce a new character here that
True.
Dontos has known for quite a while.
Yeah, but his sloppiness is beginning to get a bit creepy as well. He seems to want to meet up with his jonquil quite often, and she is kind to him, and she is pretty, and he wants kisses on the lips. All of this puts them both at terrible risk. I mean, they're at terrible risk even if they don't meet up. If they do meet up and they get caught, then they're in real trouble.
Dontos would be dead, no doubt.
Yeah.
And probably
and
in a very terrible
horribly.
way, not just,
Yes.
Killed quickly. He would probably be
Right.
tortured, and Sansa would be beaten, yes.
And
But-
all the information he's bringing Sansa is of absolutely no use to her now. I mean, it perhaps is of strategic interest to some military leaders should she ever bump into any of those, but she's trapped in King's Landing. All she wants to know is, where is my ticket out of here?
Yeah.
So they shouldn't meet. They should not meet until he's got something for her.
You're right. And, when they very first met, when I was thinking back about their very first meeting, I thought he said, we can't meet up because it's too dangerous. But I went back and looked, and he said, come to the godswood as often as possible. It's the only place that's safe. So, he's not exactly discouraging her showing up, as often as possible to get updates.
And they do mention in this chapter that as she walks back into the Red Keep from the Godswood, she's completely unchallenged because all of the guards internally have been reassigned to the walls for the coming war. So
Right.
I guess internal security has slackened a little bit, making this less of a danger, I guess.
Yeah, everyone's out on the walls and with other duties. But he sure is playing up this Florian Jonquil thing, which, in some ways is smart to keep her hopeful and trusting. She's caught up in this Florian Jonquil fantasy. She's 13 and she loves fantasy stories. So, in some ways it's good to keep her mind on something other than the dangers of life as a captive.
Yeah, but it did feel like as this chapter went on, and actually as he overplayed the Florian Jonquil hand, it was losing its sheen for Sansa as well. There were several times when she was talking to him, she said she was on the verge of tears,
Right, yes.
And not at the romance of the situation, I feel.
No, in fact, he was saying, when she said, I want the godswood burned down, I want the Sept of Baelor burned down, he said, hush, child, the gods will hear you. And she said, they don't ever hear my prayers. And he was like, yes, they do. They sent you me. And she said, what have you done? You've done nothing for me. So, yeah.
I refer you to my previous answer.
But I also went back, I reread that their meet cute, if you will. And he's the one that brought it up originally, this whole Jonquil Florian thing. She didn't invent that in her head. He was the one that started referring to each other as Jonquil and Florian. So
you mentioned that maybe the friend could be Varys, but Varys we know has another friend who is definitely outside the city. Illyrio Mopatis is friend.
Oh, right.
And that could be somebody who is involved in this. So, but again, we think from the very little evidence we have, our best guess is that they are plotting to bring a Targaryen back to the throne. So I'm not sure how freeing Sansa helps that.
Right.
Or in fact, anything with Sansa helps that.
Right. Yeah, I guess it could help stabilize the realm a bit because it would give the Starks the upper hand. I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe. But again, yeah, that's true. There is the danger of a stabilization of the realm through a Joffrey-Sansa marriage. But again, Joffrey's decision to kill Ned means that would never be seen as legitimate by the North, so it's a complete waste of time.
Yes.
So
right.
I'm just not sure how Sansa plays into the Game of Thrones as it pertains to the Targaryens.
Yeah, I agree. But so we get news. In fact, Dontos shares this news with Sansa that Stannis has burned the Godswood in Storm's End, and we're getting this like fourth hand. So we can't take this as gospel. We got it last Tyrion chapter. He told the High Septon that was the deal. But then he followed it up with, and I want you to spread the rumor that he's going to burn the Great Sept of Baelor. So whether he actually did or not is something that we'll have to see, I guess.
Yes, it could be the telephone game. Stannis did not pray in the godswood at Storm's End.
He did what?
By the time he got to King's Landing,
fire to the godswood?
He burned the place.
and we're still unclear where Stannis is in his belief in worship of R'hllor. Surely he's become a believer at some level here, because either Melisandre is simply a Shadowbinder and just giving credit for her abilities to R'hllor, because maybe she thinks it'd be easier, more accepted if it was done by a god than by a Shadowbinder in Westeros, or R'hllor has done some serious heavy lifting for Stannis. So he's cleared 2 major hurdles out of Stannis' way.
Right. I mean, absolutely. As I've said before, if you're the kind of person who needs direct evidence of the ability of a god to intercede in your daily life, then R'hllor is the one to saddle your wagon to, because he kills your enemies.
You don't even need to take
on
it
demand.
On faith. He just...
Exactly. Who needs faith? I saw what he just did to that guy.
Right. Now, his meaning Stannis, his opinions of Melisandre and R'hllor definitely changed from Davos 1 to Davos 2. Davos 1, he was saying, I don't believe in any gods ever since my parents died, but I'm going to use this Melisandre because she scares people. To Davos 2, R'hllor has already, by the end of that chapter, killed 2 people for Stannis. So, he was talking a lot more like a believer of R'hllor and Melisandre. So, and of course...
Can I just interject there?
Yes.
I think one of the reasons for that is that one of the people who Melisandre has begun to scare is Stannis.
Right.
Previously, he just scared the unwashed masses, but now Stannis knows what she's capable of. He's scared too.
I want her on my side.
Exactly.
But he also, Dontos also spreads this rumor that Tyrion wanted started, that when Stannis gets to King's Landing, if he wins, he's going to burn the Great Sept of Baelor. And, it sounds like possibly this rumor is starting to take hold in the city, which can only benefit the Lannisters, because the people want to keep the faith of the Seven, the gods that they worship, and, from having their sept burnt down. Then the Lannisters need to win this war.
Yeah, but you got to balance that with the getting rid of the demon monkey.
I mean, that's true.
A new king who, they're all starving. I can't imagine there's going to be a lot of loyalty to the Lannisters within King's Landing, to be honest.
Yeah, of course, you could also paint Stannis as a blasphemer and discredit him, because, you could make the argument, surely if he can turn his back on his gods, then he must be lying about his right to the throne. He's not a trustworthy person.
Yeah. But if you're building those scales up, then you've got this lecherous demon monkey in the other thing, and it's hard to imagine them coming down too heavily against Stannis.
Well, yeah.
Sansa's all for burning of the Great Sept, because that's where Joffrey beheaded her father.
Yeah, that's an understandable reaction, of course. I mean, the faith the faith wasn't involved in the deed, of course. That was Joffrey and Sir Illiam Payne. But the gods didn't do anything to stop it on their home turf. They were at the Great Sept of Baelor. The gods did nothing to prevent it. So, but then again, Cat, only one of her parents worshipped the Seven. Ned worshipped the old gods, and Sansa was raised in Winterfell. So, maybe there wasn't the strongest bond between her and the Seven in the first place.
Yeah, I always imagined, and maybe this is just projecting, that Sansa was the most converted to the faith of the Seven of the Stark children.
Yes, I think you're right.
She hung out with Septa Mordane.
Yeah, it's true.
So
she was pretty tight with Septa Mordane.
Exactly. Her confidant and advisor was a priestess of the religion. So you'd think that of all the children.
Yep. Yes.
But then again, I think maybe you're going to mention this later on in this chapter. She did sleep the night in the godswood when they found out that Bran had woken up. So,
right. Yeah. And I think she mentioned a lot of her a lot of the things she liked about worshiping the Seven was due to the pomp and circumstance of it all. She liked all the rituals and the crystals and
right. Whereas of course the old gods were much more pagan,
right.
less ritual, more sort of earthy.
Yes.
So Stannis' vanguard is now across the Blackwater rush from King's Landing. The banners include the Fossaways, both red and green apples of the Fossaways, the Estamonts, the Turtle of the Estamonts, the Fox and Flowers of the Florents, and it's led by Sir Geard Morrigan.
Yeah, now all those houses were present at the Stannis Courtney Penrose parlay at Storm's End. Both John of the Green Apple Fossaways and Brian of the Red were there. And those, the Fossaways, both green and red, are Reach houses who didn't follow Loras when he left, along with the Florents. They also are a Reach house that stayed to back Stannis. And then we had talked about the Estermonts because, in Davos too, because we thought it was rather tough that Stannis' grandfather, Eldon Estermont, backed his younger brother Renly over him. That had to be a hard pill to swallow there.
Grandparents are curmudgeonly. They have favorites.
Grandpa Estermont was like, I like the younger one better. But there's two, both Errol and Varner Estermont were at that parlay with Courtney Penrose. And his grandfather, Eldon, he didn't want to fight under the R'hllor banner. He asked to continue to fight under the Crown and Stag banner of Baratheon.
Right.
So that might have had something to do with it. Yes.
Yeah. And by contrast, Lord Alistair Florent, who's Selyse's family, Selyse being Stannis' wife, he's become an ardent supporter of R'hllor.
Right. Just like
possibly
overnight.
Right. Got wind of the demon shadow and converted there and then. So Geard Morrigan is Geard the Green. He's a member of Renly's Rainbow Guard. So he's done a 180 because...
Big time.
Right. But again, I'm fine with people who've made that switch, to be honest, because you've decided the Lannisters are fake. It should be a Baratheon. You chose the younger one because you liked him, but, hey, he's gone. Let's go with the older one.
Yeah, he asked to command Renly's vanguard against Stannis. And now he's leading Stannis' vanguard. So,
I want to be right at the front of Stannis' army. Leading them.
That does, it does show that Stannis isn't, maybe not as concrete set in his ways as he gets credit for, he's making adjustments.
Yes, he's the more it gets reinforced that he is set in his ways, the more counterexamples one finds.
Right. Yes, exactly. But the problem is that Stannis' vanguard is stuck on the south side of the river waiting on ships. And Dontos says to Sansa, he says it's a long way to sail from Storm's End to King's Landing, and maybe the gods will send a storm and sweep them from the seas.
Do you know what struck me about that? I know you're the one bringing this up, but the thing that struck me about that is there's a sense that Dontos doesn't want Stannis to succeed.
Right.
I know there's an awful lot of danger if Stannis does succeed, but you're fool to Joffrey Baratheon, first of his name.
Right.
A mere war ravaging through where you live is nothing compared to your daily life.
That's an interesting take on that. Yeah, I definitely got, at least he was saying it out loud in case he was overheard, maybe.
Maybe so, yeah.
But, he mentions he has to travel past Massey's Hook and through the Gullet and the Bay, but those are all Stannis held.
Controlled, yeah.
Yeah, that's so all Bannermen of Stannis.
Barring the weather, it's plain sailing, basically.
Right, yes. Now, but,
they happen to bump into Myrcella on one of her jags across the narrow sea.
Yeah, right. Hey, I know that. I know that girl. But
She's constantly buzzing around us.
Sansa's kind of in a unique position in this particular war because as a Stark, she's a good bit different from the other, let's say, call them hostages, such as Horace Redwine, because her brother is technically an opponent of Stannis.
Yeah, right.
And we know that Cat certainly fears what Stannis will do about Robb, because he lumped Robb in as a traitor, and Cat saw the Shadow Assassin kill Renly, so she's very worried about that.
I confidently predict that when Stannis takes King's Landing, he will not let Sansa go. Her situation will remain very much the same, with a little bit less abuse.
Yes, I was going to say that. Yes, she could be freed from the torment by the Lannisters if King's Landing falls to Stannis. But of course, we do know that Stannis is making sacrifices to R'hllor, so if he wants to make an example of a traitor's cause being Robb's cause, it could be bad news for Sansa.
Yeah, and if you do imagine a sort of very straight swap between the Lannisters having control of Sansa and now Stannis having control of Sansa, the Lannisters are kept in check by Jaime.
Oh, right.
Because there is a sort of a balance of captives here, but Stannis.
Right.
Nothing to stop him. He could kill Sansa. It doesn't bother him in the slightest, But apart from the fact he's actually so generous of spirit and flexible.
So we've learned.
So Sansa runs into the Hound while she's overlooking the city at the top of the tower in Maegor's Holdfast. The Hound is definitely on a bit of a downswing.
Before you go into the Hound, when I was reading that part about Sansa, she was kind of describing the scene overlooking, because she's at the top of a tower in Maegor's Holdfast and kind of looking over everything, and it reminded me a lot of the vantage point that Cat had in the Battle of the Fords, looking out from Riverrun. So it felt very like a similar situation.
I guess lady watching battle from castle.
Right.
There's only so many ways to make that sound different, but yes, I do take your point. There are parallels.
Drone footage.
So, yeah. So the Hound's tack, and I'm always imagining that the Hound is trying to ingratiate himself with Sansa. So what he decides to do is he decides to assassinate the character of Ned Stark. This is his plan. Right. He's realised that there's no way to improve his own standing, but if he could just drag Ned down to his level, he might start to look a little better in Sansa's eyes, I guess.
Of course. How could that fail? I think maybe that... Yes, I think obviously he was trying to. We're going to talk a lot about the way he deals with Sansa. I think a lot of that was him trying to look tough and not let Sansa get close to him, keep her at arm's length. But also, he's probably not spent a lot of time around men as honorable and true as Ned. So maybe in his mind, he thinks, no, there's no way. Everyone loves killing. It's the most beautiful thing, or whatever he calls it.
Exactly.
The sweetest
and High
thing.
Lords get to do it whenever they want because they're High Lords, So that's why he didn't have a headsman, because he loved it so much.
Right. Yes, that's what it was.
And he really harps on that there's no true knights. And honestly, Sansa Stark has thrown her lot in with Ser Dontos. I think it's pretty clear that she's given up on true knights at this point. She's like, anyone will do.
Anyone at this point. But of course, in her dream, Sansa shouts for every heroic, beloved person she can think of, like from knights of yore to her brothers, and none of them come to her rescue. And the only man who really, in real life, came to her rescue was the one who claims he loves killing people, including women and children. So, it certainly throws the idea of true knights on its head in the dream.
Of course, Sansa has a little bit of insight into Sandor Clegane that others don't, which is that he is afraid of his brother.
Right.
In this chapter as well, he gives away a little bit of the fact he might be a little bit afraid of fire, because he looks sort of like dubiously at the fires and says that those who fight with fire are cowards. But I would think it feels strange that Sandor Clegane is saying that you should fight in certain ways after just earlier in the same paragraph he was saying how fun it is to kill people and how we should be able to do whatever we want,
As long as you don't use
fire. The strong should always kill the weak whenever they feel like, but they shouldn't do it that way.
No, that way is cowardly.
Yeah.
Now, after the riots, it was the Tyrion chapter that the riot happened. I think it was Tyrion 9. And after the riot, when they're back in the Red Keep, Tyrion saw fear of the fires in Flea Bottom in Sandor's eyes, in the Hound's eyes. So we did get a little taste that he might have issues with flame. And Tyrion thought he knows the taste of fire too well. It scares him.
Yeah.
So
the Hound's worldview is increasingly nihilistic. And one interpretation is that partly because he yet again saved Sansa. This time it wasn't that much of a save. She just felt slightly lightheaded momentarily. But he was there on hand because he follows her around like a shadow.
What was he doing up there in the first place?
He was following Sansa Stark around like a shadow. That's what he was doing.
She says that all the white cloaks aren't guarding the entrance to Maegor's Holdfast, and nobody's watching her because everybody's off doing important things, and he's just hanging out at the top of this tower.
It's because he saw her heading up there. That's
I
why.
guess.
So I think so. The interpretation I was going to give was that his feelings for Sansa have confused him, and they're making him lash out in this way, trying to be exactly the opposite of what he's feeling.
Yes. My thought was very similar, that his vulnerability is on full display here. Sansa looked him in the face and showed him kindness, and that was too much intimacy for him. He needed to show his bravado and toughness and just how bad of a man he is, so she couldn't see the scared, vulnerable man inside. He had to close it all up and be a jerk.
You've mentioned that he was showing this bravado. It must be strange. You and I are not the Hound. We are not big, rugged, tough men who would put the fear of God into our enemies, right?
Speak for yourself.
Well, okay. Really, I'm talking about me here. I understand the occasional need to show bravado and toughness, to dispel the myth of slightly effete, useless European. But if I was built like and looked like Sandor Clegane, you don't have to do anything.
Right.
Silence is the best weapon right there if you want to appear tough.
Right.
Just snarl, it'd be enough.
Yeah, he doubles down though. He's not being mean is not enough. He then puts his sword blade against her throat, against the throat of a 13-year-old girl. And I mean, yeah, the only explanation is that he's trying to convince them both that he's too mean and tough to care about her and her courtesies and the fact that she was trying to thank him.
Yeah, she makes a good observation that he's like a wild dog who just doesn't understand kindness and just bites the hand that's stroking him.
Right. Yes, I think she might be right about that.
Yeah. So that night, Sansa has gruesome dream of the riot and extrapolates what might have happened to her had the Hound not saved her yet again.
Yeah, we actually get a decent description. We didn't know what happened to her. It was Tyrion's POV. We just knew that Sandor saved her from the crowd, but we get a decent description of just how much peril she was in, and she was about to be in a really terrible situation if the Hound hadn't saved her. So.
Yes.
Anyway, continue on with where you were going with this.
No. But the dream, so it all goes horribly wrong and she gets stabbed in the stomach. Well, this is her having her first period. So it's got to be just awful for Sansa. Look, I'm a guy. My pronouns are he and him. And I only have a son. So my experience of this is very limited. But it's got to be scary, upsetting and embarrassing. Even if you're in the bosom of a loving family.
Right. Yes.
But Sansa's situation has got to amplify that just 1,000-fold,
I'm sure.
Not just the complete
because it means so much. That's what makes it. The fact she doesn't have her mother or any family around is, I'm sure, very makes it a lot harder. But the fact that this means she is now, as she puts it, weddable and beddable to Joffrey, that just makes it all the worse. So much worse.
Right. I mean, so you've got nobody to sympathize with you. No one to say, don't worry, that's not an abnormal amount of blood. That, for instance, is a question that I would want to know.
Right.
If I woke up bleeding, I would be like, is that normal? It seems like way too much. No matter how much it is, I would think it was way too much. And like you say, the fuse has got lit on her marrying Joffrey Baratheon, who killed her puppy and her father.
And both. And beats her on the regular, or has her beaten anyway. But, I was thinking about, she told Ser Dontos at the beginning of this chapter that now's the perfect time to escape because they'd basically forgotten about her with everyone focused on the war. And I wonder if maybe the fact that she now is flowered and is marryable by Joffrey, if this will refocus attention on her and make it not an ideal time to escape, or less so.
If I were her, I would march into Ser Dontos' room with the sheet and go, now is the perfect time.
We gotta go now.
So then Sansa and Cersei have a scene together, which is extraordinarily revealing.
It is, yeah.
Cersei must be so sure of her position that she just throws fuel on the smoulders of "is Jaime the father of her children" rumour by relating the story of him, Jaime, being present at the birth of her, and can we just say it, his, 3 children.
Yes, he was a very interested uncle in the birthing process.
Yeah. I mean, to the point of being like really poking his nose in where it wasn't needed.
I think it's the closest she's come to admitting the truth of the true parentage of her children since that talk with Ned in the Godswood, when she actually did admit that they were Jaime's kids.
You know what? I'd forgotten that she did that. Well, I hadn't actually forgotten. I'd remembered that she did that. But thinking back on that now, when I read that, I knew that Ned's days were numbered because this is not my first rodeo.
Right? That one you remembered.
That I did remember. So, but she told him as if she knew he was a dead man. As if she knew that only one of them was going to live to tell the story of this moment.
Right.
But she didn't want him dead. Joffrey did that.
Yes, you are right. She wanted him to take the black.
Right. And if you took the black, you would head north up the King's Road and you'd stop at inns and things. And you know what? If I were him, I'd be like, the black is not a vow of silence.
Right, not a silent sister.
I got some things I want to tell.
That is a solid point. Yeah.
But in some ways, it feels like sort of like a conflation. Like she knew his days were numbered, but obviously she didn't.
Right.
But how about she did? She always intended him to die, and everything she said about his death not being what she wanted is a
plausible deniability,
a mama's farce.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to Sansa and Cersei.
Yes. So Cersei compares Sansa's future husband and father of her children to Jaime, not to Robert. Which feels like that's not what you should do if you're...
Yeah, the one-to-one comparison it shouldn't work out there, but yet it does. Although she expects Joff to follow in Robert's footsteps and be an abusive, absent husband and father, rather than Jaime's more doting uncle role, I guess.
You know, when she said absent, Cersei did a little prayer to all the gods, like, yes, I'll vote for absent. As much as possible.
And she also confirms that Sansa will never get the same attentiveness from Joffrey. But like you said, she's contrasting that with Jaime, not with Robert. So, yeah.
Right. So basically, it's like saying, Joffrey's not going to love you as much as your brother did.
Right.
Right, that's probably true, but it seems weird that you, who've been married, choose that comparison. I'm just saying.
It seems a little odd, I guess.
She also mentions that Robert, who was known to have sired multiple bastards, those bastards, those children, loved to be in Robert's arms, but his 3 true-born children did not. They squealed and cried in Robert's arms.
Yeah. My first thought was, how did she know how Robert's bastards reacted to him? I can't recall if... I know there were some bastards that I believe in Casterly Rock, some babies that she rumored to have had killed. And, I don't know how often she was around Robert with one of his bastards.
I would assume not often, but we do know from Peter Baelish, or at least we never know anything from Peter Baelish, but Peter Baelish said that she has spies everywhere. So her spies probably knew about baby Barra, for instance.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, the reports were coming back to her.
He would go and spend time with that baby, and so the reports could come back saying the baby really likes him,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Cersei suggests that Catelyn Stark might have prepared Sansa better for the day of her first period, but I feel that's a little bit rich coming from the person who's got the child imprisoned from her mother.
Yes. Yeah.
You imprison a child before her first period until after her first period, and then blame the mother for not having prepared her appropriately for that moment.
It's been quite a while since she last saw her mother. There's plenty of time for preparation there that didn't get to happen. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And the other, so big revelation number 1 is like, oh yeah, pretty much everyone knows that Jaime's the father of my children, but let's move on. Sansa should check where Ilyn Payne is at this point. But then Cersei also casually admits to an acceptance that Arya is dead. And Sansa doesn't even react. So maybe this is now the commonly accepted story in King's Landing, that Arya was killed.
Yeah, it's definitely a noteworthy... line that she delivers there. Yeah. Surely they won't let that get out of the Red Keep, though, because Arya is still part of the Lannister bargaining chips, if they ever plan on doing any more bargaining. So,
right. And so, yeah, it's a weird thing to say, because you've got to imagine that you'd still want to keep up the public face of, we have both daughters, and so any discussion about Arya not being in their clutches is weird. Obviously, it's hard to keep up the pretense to Sansa when you can't present the child.
Right. But... Yes, yeah. Yeah, that's just not something they'd want to get out, that's for sure.
Yeah,
but she almost admits that Joff is not a very good person. She says about the wedding and bedding with Joffrey that the prospect doesn't entice you like it once did, which I cannot fault you for. And... at first I thought, yeah, that's a pretty good admission. But the more I thought about it, everyone. Just last night, Stacey was telling me how annoying I am when I was singing a song while we were getting ready for bed. Have you seen the new movie Encanto? It's a Disney movie. Yeah, I could tell by your face. I had a hunch you had not seen it. Well, Molly and Stacey and I watched it a couple weeks ago, and it's really good. And there's this one song that Molly always plays on her way home from swim, and it's we don't talk about Bruno, no. And I kept singing that part all night. Stacey was like, "Would you stop with the singing?"
I am Team Stacey on this one. I already hate it.
It's very catchy. If you watch the movie, you'll be singing "We Don't Talk About Bruno" as well.
Yeah, I was going to interject when you were talking about Cersei almost admitting that Joffrey isn't a good person to say, I don't really need that validation. I've reached my own, and I'm very comfortable with
your own conclusion
there. His mother's opinion is neither here nor there.
Yeah. But Cersei says to Sansa that you're going to take a lot of humiliation and shame from Joffrey, but you can blame that on Arya. It's her fault because she shamed Joffrey, and so now Joffrey is going to pass that shame along to you. And we've always talked, and when we talked to Dr. Honda, we talked about, a lot of this being part of his psychopathy. But she has a different angle on it. She thinks it's just he treats you so terribly because he's embarrassed of what happened to him by your little 9-year-old sister.
I'll just mention again, he was a horrible person before that.
He was, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Again, this is his mother's opinion of why these things are happening.
Coming back to the children liking to be in Robert's arms if they were actually Roberts, and not liking to be in Robert's arms if they were not Roberts, Cersei reckons that stemmed from Robert's need to be loved. And because she says that because the 3 true-born children would not settle in his arms, he disliked them.
Right.
And she felt like it was a two-way street. Because they didn't settle in his arms, he didn't like them because he really needed them to love him. The bastards, who were definitely his, loved him. He loved them back. It was a two-way street. And that need to be loved, I can see that as a Robert trait, to be honest. It sort of fits with what we've heard of him. And Cersei then says that that's an issue that he shares with Tyrion, which is kind of interesting because Tyrion is kind of a lone wolf for someone who needs to be loved. But I can also see it in him too. Not as bad as Robert, but I can see it. There's a thread of it.
I wonder exactly what she meant by that. What what examples she had in her head, because maybe she means how he's adjusted her plans to benefit the populace, in her mind, trying to make himself more popular than her. Well, we've seen him make some really hard decisions that he knew full well weren't going to go over very well, such as burning everything outside the walls. And, they don't call him Evil Monkey Demon because he's so loved in the city. So, but then I wondered if maybe this was a hint drop to the reader that she knows about Shay.
Yeah. Because that's my interpretation of it. I like your interpretation about his actions towards the populace. But my first thought was Tysha. His being hung up about Tysha, and that's because he was loved very briefly, kind of thing, even if it was fake.
Right.
But then that sort of maps onto he's got another one, and I'm aware of it, and I'm going to smoke her out, kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, just a thought. Maybe that's just like a tiny little hint that she knows that he's got a love of his life right now.
Yeah, Cersei warns Sansa to have a new set of lies up her sleeve for when Stannis arrives, because she says, I love Joffrey, kind of thing, and she's like, have a new set of lies for when Stannis arrives. The thing is, Sansa should just tell Stannis the whole truth. He's probably going to keep you as a hostage anyway, but he is not the Lannisters.
Right. Yeah. And that's more interesting insight into Cersei's thoughts, because that statement makes it sound like she expects them to lose this war. Like, when Stannis gets here, you better have a new lie ready. Of course, she could just be a pessimistic optimist like me, and preparing for the worst, but secretly hoping for the best.
Yeah. Undiagnosed, but
right.
Not yet seen as a true mental illness, but it will be one day.
I'm working on it.
And also, the other aspect of that is that her getting Tommen out of the city. She was so upset to lose Myrcella, but then she sent Tommen out of the city. It's like she came round to we're going to lose this.
Yeah,
it's all going to go horribly wrong.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that example. That's a good example of how she's preparing for if they lose.
So when they're talking about love, Sansa says everyone wants to be loved, and Cersei reminds Sansa of how dumb she is. It's not the coolest thing anyone's ever said, but it's not that far from the truth. I think most of us do actually like to be loved,
Right, except for Sandor Clegane, apparently.
Yeah, right. Cersei is one of the people who doesn't need to be loved, but she is a sucker for Jaime, and also for her offspring, it seems.
Yeah.
Including Joffrey, who is the least lovable person ever.
That's a very good point.
All right, you got some background for us?
I do have some background. So, one of the names, I mentioned that Sansa, in her dream, shouts out every name she could think of, from, famous knights of yesteryear to her brothers, and none of them come to her rescue. One of the names she shouts out is Sir Ryman Redwine, And Sir Ryman Redwine is a famous knight from, obviously, House Redwine. And in his youth, he and his two older brothers, Robert and Rickard, moved to King's Landing with their father, Manfred, when Manfred was named Master of Ships to King Jaehaerys I Targaryen. And in 58 AC, during a tourney to celebrate the 10th anniversary of King Jaehaerys' coronation, what I believe to be roughly a teenage Ryam went on quite a run. He unhorsed Sir Ronald Baratheon, Arthur Oakheart, Lord Simon Dondarrion, and Sir Harry's Hogg, as well as two members of the Kingsguard in Sir Lawrence Roxton and Sir Lucamore Strong to win the tourney. And of course, he named Queen Alysanne Targaryen as the tourney's Queen of Love and Beauty. And his efforts clearly earned him renown, as 2 years later he joined the Kingsguard along with Sir Robin Shaw. Now, fast forward 40 years, and Ryam once again put his skills on display for all to see, this time to celebrate the 50th year of Jaehaerys' reign in 98 AC. Sir Ryam and Sir Clement Crabbe broke 30 lances against each other before the king declared them co-champions. And that tilt right there is widely considered the finest display of jousting in the history of Westeros. By 99 AC, Ryam, now Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, was named Hand of the King by King Jaehaerys after the death of his longtime hand and great friend to the king, Septon Barth. Unfortunately, the knight's abilities with sword and lance did not transfer to the political scene. Ryam has the distinction of being one of the worst Hands of the Kings in the history of the Seven Kingdoms. In less than a year, he was replaced by the king's son and heir, Prince Baelon Targaryen. But now, back in his role as Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Ryam served King Viserys I, that is, after the death of Jaehaerys in 103 AC, until Ryam died in 105, and his slot in the Kingsguard was taken by another famous knight, Sir Criston Cole.
All right, thank you. So, comparison with the television show, Sansa doesn't hang out with Ser Dontos at all. He's in the show, but only fleetingly, at this point anyway. Instead, Shae, acting as handmaid, is her one friend and confidant. Remember, in the show, that's where Shae's working, not
instead of Lolly Stokeworth.
Yeah. Shae tries to help her hide the evidence of her first period, which is also presaged by the dream of the riot and near rape. But another servant spots them trying to destroy the evidence. Shae chases and threatens that servant into silence, but when she returns to the room, the Hound is standing there and the gig is up. The scene with Cersei and Sansa is incredibly close to the book, like verbatim, the discussion between them, basically.
Okay.
Including Robert's absence, Jaime's presence at the birth, and also, as an aside, at the conception of the princes and princesses. And Cersei genuinely conveys some sympathy towards Sansa, which does add a bit of richness to her. She's often a pantomime villain in the TV show.
Right. Yeah. Oh, good stuff.
Pedantry Corner. My only pedantry is something I've touched on in the past, but we haven't really mentioned it today. It seems like a mummer's farce of Sansa still marrying Joffrey. So there's no strategic value to this, really. I mean,
right.
I guess you could argue that keeping her abject, knowing that that's what she's got to look forward to, keeps her as abject as possible, and that might be useful to you. But you are driving her towards desperation, and that could lead to something untoward that you don't want. You know? Maybe they're cooking up some other misery for Sansa.
Right. They're working on a backup plan for misery for her. Yeah, I thought it was odd that Cersei was acting as though she still plans on marrying Joff to Sansa.
Right. They have an active plan in the works of marrying her to marrying Joffrey to Marjorie Tyrell.
Yeah, and she was in the room when they were discussing the plan. She did cling to the Sansa plan for a little bit, but then ultimately conceded to the Marjorie plan.
Yeah.
So maybe she's not willing to show her hand yet in case the Marjorie plan doesn't work out, and then this would be Sansa as her backup plan, I guess.
Yeah, sounds good.
So my piece of pedantry was just... So, am I understanding correctly that the only way to go south of King's Landing is to take the ferry across the Blackwater Rush. There's no bridges nearby the King's Road and King's Landing. And then why would Stannis' force show up on the wrong side of the river in the first place? What can they possibly hope to accomplish sitting on the wrong side of the river? And then Renly's traveled the Rose Road with his 80,000 knights, and he had 0 ships as well. And the Rose Road runs right into the same spot where you have to take the ferry across the river. So what was their plan? They're gonna wait for the ferry, come back and forth to take their 80,000 people across. So I get it. In times of war, you might want to burn a bridge across the Blackwater Rush because you don't want the troops getting across. But it seems unrealistic that no bridge of any noteworthy size is within any reasonable distance of the capital of the realm. I was thinking when you said that if you were king, the first thing you do would be build a canal at the, around the neck area.
Oh yeah,
it kind of reminded me of that. Like, why is that not done either?
You're absolutely right. That is extraordinary. It's I don't know how we haven't thought of this before. I mean, it just dawned on me when I saw them sitting on the wrong side. They've magicked themselves across this river to get on the wrong side of this river, to be honest.
Right. What's the point? Why show up if you're going to sit on the wrong side of the river? But logistically, how is it that when the infrastructure was built, I mean, they have roads. They have the Rose Road and the Gold Road and the King's Road.
Which have to have bridges. They just have to.
Bridges, yeah. Why is there no bridge? So, anyway, that's my pedantry.
Yeah. So news and notes. We're going to move our drop day to Tuesdays. So we're just going to move 24 hours back, just to make things logistically a little bit easier on us. So apologies to those who look forward to these coming out on Sunday night, Monday morning, but they will be there Monday night, Tuesday morning.
Right.
Our Australian listeners, that'll be like Tuesday, Wednesday for you. Sorry.
It will make life easier on us. Apologize if there's any inconvenience.
And our New Zealand listeners too, and
right.
Everyone in the Far East, basically. Sorry.
Yes. Do you want to talk about our early bird gets the worm plan?
Yeah. So we have now on our Buy Me a Coffee site, we have the ability to become a sustainer. Thank you again to those who've already become sustainers. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
We are thinking of down the road having a sort of like a higher tier of sustainer who might get some special benefits. We want to thank the people who've been with us on the journey so far, and we want to give them an opportunity to grandfather themselves into the current tier. So basically, right now the tier is $5 a month to become a sustainer. Anyone who signs up to be a sustainer between now and the end of February 2022 will be grandfathered into the highest tier that we create. Whatever tiers we create above that, you'll have the rights to it while you remain a sustainer. So when there's $1,000 a month tier, you'll get it for $5 a month. So
what will that be? Camping?
Yes, I don't know.
Camping with us.
Presumably, they're going to be living with us at that point.
Living in my basement.
Yeah, you get all this for $5 a month. Yeah. So again, we're not sure exactly what that upper echelon will look like, but if you become a sustainer now between now and the end of February, you'll be entitled to whatever benefits those upper echelon people get.
Right.
And while we're talking about sort of the fans, we just want to shout out to the discussion in the Discord community this past weekend. Great stuff. We were on the spoilers channel, so we can't really talk too much about what was said, but it was really very, very interesting. And,
it really was. Yes, I applaud the really interesting ideas and discussions that were happening.
It made me realize how incredibly grateful I am that we're doing this spoiler free.
Right.
Because if we were to do spoilers, every episode would take like 24 hours. Because you'd have to go down all these tangents,
Yeah. Yes. That was part of the reason why I proposed spoiler free, because it could just get so unruly if we start talking theories and spoilers and stuff.
Plus, insert joke about Simon's memory.
Yes, well, there's that.
Not a specialty of the house.
I was throwing you a bone there. But some of the topics that we discussed ranged from Westeros' stunted growth and development as far as technology and things of that nature. The age of the Stark line, which you brought up last episode, could it really be 8,000? We talked about a lot about that. And, of course, like you said, a lot of other spoiler stuff that we can't mention here, but...
Yeah, but if you were interested in the Bale the Bard thing that was being talked about, that got some more traction, and then all kinds of where the Danes come into this.
Right, yes.
Who the Sword of Morning is, and things like that. It's fascinating stuff.
It really was. And, of course, very kind words about us from two listeners, Ryan and Rob, so very much appreciated all that nice stuff that you said about us. And I will just quickly say, because I was just corresponding with a newish listener yesterday, and I mentioned about our Discord server, and he said he didn't have Discord, he didn't really know what it was. And I'll say, you and I also had no idea what Discord was. God, yeah. I thought it was something that the kids did. And
it is.
It is something that the kids... I thought it was something only the kids did. And
it is plus us too.
It's quite easy. And it's a lot of fun.
It is. Yeah.
So I encourage you not to let your lack of knowledge about Discord prevent you from joining us.
I don't. You should see how many times I have to try and figure out how to edit a post on Discord. All the time. I'm like, oh my goodness, look at my punctuation. I've got to go back. The kids have already moved on. They're not even reading my garbage.
Right. Molly gets upset when I use punctuation in texts. She says it sounds mean. I'm like, what? What do you mean? She's like, don't put periods at the end of your sentences in text. It sounds like you're mad. Anyway.
All right, and please keep rating us on Spotify. Spotify has a rating function now for podcasts. It's not that easy to find, I found, when I tried to do it. So do hunt for it, please.
Yes, please. Just quickly 5-star rating and move on with your life, and we will be forever grateful. And, of course, continue to review and rate us on Apple Podcasts and podchaser.com.
Yeah.
This Spotify thing is new, so we're harping on it.
So in conclusion, Sansa needs a bit more from Ser Dontos. He's spying on the King's councils, but for whose benefit?
Right.
Sansa maybe needs to start making her own plans, to be honest.
Yeah, one smart thing he said to her, he said she's so clever, and she says, well, Joffrey and Queen Cersei tell me I'm stupid, and he's like, good, let them think that. You're in a much better position if they think you're no threat or that you're stupid. And that goes for both him and Sansa. They're both benefiting from the fact that they're no threat.
But one thing that will make you look a little less stupid and a little bit more of a threat is to be constantly meeting up with your co-conspirator and talking about nothing useful.
Right.
Just
3
FYI.
times breakfast, lunch, and dinner they're meeting up.
So Stannis' vanguard has arrived. It isn't doing much good. It's sitting on the wrong side of the river. But nevertheless, Cersei's convinced that she's going to lose to these idiots.
Yeah, I guess maybe they're going to try and cut down some of those trees before they get burnt to build some boats
to build
to
a
get
bridge.
Across. Yeah, build a bridge. And Sandor, the Hound, he's really struggling to find consistent behavior towards Sansa. Sometimes he looks like he's her savior, her knight in shining armor. And other times he's absolutely horrible to her. One thing we didn't mention in this, in the summary or in the discussion, is that I don't think we mentioned it in the summary anyway, is that he says to her, do you remember the dance he did, meaning Ned, after they cut his head off?
Oh, yeah.
Terrible thing to say to a little girl about her dad being executed.
Yes, sorry, I forgot we edited that out for horribleness, but yes, that was the worst thing he said to her.
Yes, it was terrible. Absolutely.
Sympathy to Sansa for having her first period an unpleasant experience compounded severely by the circumstances she's in.
Yes.
And then Cersei scarcely concealing the incest at this point. She either thinks that Sansa's too dumb to follow her very obvious pointers, or she's so secure in her position, or she's just resigned to the fact that she's going to die. Maybe it is like the conversation with Ned. She thought one of those two was going to not survive. She thinks neither her nor Sansa are going to survive, so she might as well just blab.
Could be. Maybe it's freeing to get that off her chest before she thinks she's going to die.
It's went to the Catelyn Stark's school of keeping secrets.
Keep it till the first person you meet, and then just blab it to them. While you're alone, you're really good at keeping the secret. But Sansa was told that Arya's dead here in her conversation with Cersei. And, again, we know that's not true. But we don't know if this is the first time that Sansa heard that or not. She didn't react in any way to it.
Didn't react. She's pretty beaten down by all of the horrors, but you'd think that at some point the first time she heard it, you'd expect her to react to it.
Yeah. And I think you wrote this down here. It's ultimately because of Sansa that she would be dead, which has got to weigh on her further. Huge
sympathy for a small child in a terrible situation, but she brought a lot of this on herself.
Yeah.
And if Arya is dead, that's going to be on her conscience forever,
Yeah.
But Cersei was actually quite sympathetic and kind to Sansa in a way we hadn't really seen before.
Right.
The siege is finally gearing up. Will the attack heat up when Stannis' naval force arrives? Will he and Melisandre go the same Shadow Demon route? But who to kill? There's so many within King's Landing.
Right.
At Storm's End, there was just one.
She's going to be exhausted birthing all these shadow assassins.
The shadow sextuplets.
Right. And one of them has to go pick him up a bowl of brown from Flea Bottom while they're out. Anyway, I think we've done about all we can do with this one. How about you?
Yeah.
All right. Well, as always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at @GhostHarrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. And as we mentioned today, we are on Discord. Please come join us at one or all.
And there's 3 ways you can help us. You can first go out and leave us a review. There's no better advertising. Secondly, you could buy some merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com, or buy us a cup of Arbor Gold, or even become a sustainer at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. And again, if you sign up as a sustainer before the end of February, you'll be grandfathered into whatever delights await.
That's right.
Big thank you to those who've already become sustainers.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.